Okay, let's see what today's draw has in store for us. This is John Paul. You're listening to Life's Potluck Buffet, your favorite podcast. All right, card 16. Turn your greatest weakness into your greatest strength. This card has a little story on it, which I love. And it's the story of Henry M. Robert. And you say, John, who's Henry M. Robert? Well, those of you in the United States who are familiar with formal meetings here in the U.S. might know of a guidebook of procedure called Robert's Rules of Order. And the Robert of Robert's Rules of Order is Henry M. Robert, or Hank Robert, as those of us who knew him called him. No, I'm just kidding. He died in like 1923. No, I never knew. So, for those of you unfamiliar with Robert's Rules, when you go to a meeting and there's things like somebody has to make a motion and then that motion has to be seconded and then the motion goes up for a vote and things like that. Robert's Rules codifies this for meetings of organizations in the United States. And the way that Henry Robert came up with those rules is that he was chosen to run a church meeting in the middle of the 19th century. And he did not know how to run that meeting. I always imagine that Robert had this tortured vision of the utter chaos that would ensue at this church meeting if he didn't come up with a procedural way to run it. I always imagine Puritans running around like crazy people and just everything's gone awry. Oh, that was yesterday's card. Sounds like Robert knew what to do when things went awry. He didn't even let things go awry. So out of this great lack of knowledge, identifying his weakness being, I have been chosen to preside over a meeting and I don't know how to preside over a meeting, came the seed of this rule book. Basically, every formal meeting in the United States of America is now governed by this rule book. It has become the standard for how to govern formal meetings. And you see, that standard publication came out of Robert's greatest weakness, something that he did not think he knew how to do. But as it turns out, he clearly had a knack for researching, creating, and implementing rules of order. If you look at any biography of Robert or any description of his work, you can see the intricacies involved in the work, that there were many other rules of operating that he didn't want it to reflect. And so he made choices, and those choices still resonate today. As I am speaking with you, Robert's Rules of Order are being used in millions of cases, and I'm not even underestimating this. Millions of cases right at this moment. Robert's Rules of Order are being used at some meetings in the U.S. and elsewhere in the world. That shows you the impact of turning your greatest perceived weakness into your strength. It also reinforces for us the idea that small things are actually big things in disguise. How could Robert have known that church meeting would change the course of history? That the simple task, how could the person or people who selected him or elected him to preside over this meeting, maybe there was no election, maybe they didn't have any way to do that. Maybe it's just somebody said, hey, Henry, you're going to have to run this meeting. That small action changed the course of history. It's pretty phenomenal to think about. But these little things in our lives, when we go back to them, we realize that some small decision that we made, some small decision that someone else made, results in life-changing events. And in this case, it turned into a world-changing event. Find some area in which you know you are deficient and become proficient in it. It will be a source of flourishing and pride for you. On the card, I have a fill in the blank that I think is kind of helpful. And I'll read it to you. It says, I am really bad at blank. I am really bad at blank. What's the first thing that popped to mind? I know it came to my mind, and I have a good example of how this worked in my life. It was a long time ago when I was in high school. Because when I was in high school, I thought, well, I am good at reading comprehension, and I am good at those kinds of things to do with words, vocabulary, etc. So I need to focus on the math part of the standardized exams if I'm to do well on them, because I know that I will do well on the reading comprehension part. And so I saw that the weakness there was with the math part of the exam. And so I focused on the math part and practicing the math part. And what happened was I ended up scoring higher on the math section than I did on the reading comprehension section. So you could see how this is all possible. And I'm sure there are examples in your life where you say, I am really bad at this. And the next time you say that, if you didn't think of anything right now, the next time you find yourself saying, oh, well, I'm not really a blank person, right? I'm not really, I'm not really a morning person. What would it mean for you to become a morning person, to try it out, to become proficient at being a morning person? At what at first seems like a great challenge is often, with a little practice, the easiest thing to do. So turn your greatest weakness into your greatest strength. What if you have a weakness for chocolate? Does that mean that... Okay, that's not... Oh, I completely forgot. I wanted to mention, I said to myself the other day, you've talked about magenta noodles, and you've talked about the blue dumplings. These are these 3 suits of Life's Potluck Buffet cards. And I realized I had never talked about the yellow dots, which you can see on card 16. And those yellow dots we think of them as lemons. And so they're yellow lemons. So we have magenta noodles, blue dumpling, and yellow lemons. And those are the 3 suits of Life's Potluck Buffet. Oh, my goodness, this totally ties into the card. You know that old saying, when they give you lemons, make lemonade. Well, that's pretty much turning your greatest weakness into your greatest strength. It's a hot summer day. I could use some lemonade. That's for sure. I don't know why lemons get such a bad rap. I love lemons. I grow lemons. I think they're great. Everyone who knows me knows how great I think lemons are. So apologies to all citrus for that terrible saying. They should have used a different fruit. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. And if you want to get a copy of Robert's Rules of Order, then you can find them online. And if you want to buy a pack of Life's Potluck Buffet, please feel free to go over to lifespotluck.com and pick up a pack. Have a great day. And I make a motion that we will see each other next time. Is there a second for that motion? Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.